قل إن كنتم تحبون الله فاتبعوني يحببكم الله ويغفر لكم ذنوبكم والله غفور رحيم.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسوله الكريم. اللهم رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. اللهم لا سهل إلا ما جعلته سهلا وأنت تجعل الحزن إذا شئت سهلا. أما بعد, as always we begin by praising Allah the Almighty and sending the best of salutations upon His beloved the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So inshallah today will be our final lesson, and with that we will conclude our study of the book of fasting, Darussalam of Bulugh Al-Maram, inshallah. So let's start inshallah immediately. So today we start chapter 2 from the book, yeah? And Imam Ibn Hajar, rahimahullah, he dedicated this particular chapter, Babul I'tikaf wa Qiyami Ramadan. The chapter about i'tikaf as well as offering prayers during the night of Ramadan. But he also goes into speaking about Laylatul Qadr and slightly touches upon when Laylatul Qadr takes place. Okay, but he doesn't really go into a lot of detail, and I'll explain when we get to that, inshallah. Okay, so before we move on to the actual hadith, let's understand what is i'tikaf. Okay, so al-i'tikaf, the word i'tikaf literally means to do something continuously. That's what it literally means. That's the literal linguistic meaning, to continuously do something. And Islamically it means to reside within a masjid, to reside within a masjid in which jama'ah takes place. So you know there's a congregational prayer that's going to take place there. So which would usually mean that there is a muaddin which is appointed and there's an imam which is also appointed. Okay, so not like one of those service station mosques. You know, when you go to Saudi, you get service station mosques. I mean, they're beautiful. They're better than, they're more beautiful than any mosque probably in the UK. But you know, there's no appointed imam, there's no appointed muaddin. Just go there, pray, and leave. That's all it is, isn't it? And you probably have some South Asian person there who is the cleaner. You know, that's just the standard. That's how it is. But nevertheless, it has to be a masjid in which jama'ah is taking place, and it has to be with the intention of coming closer to Allah. Okay, so that's what i'tikaf means. So it's to reside in a masjid in which jama'ah is taking place with the intention of obedience to Allah or becoming closer to Allah the Almighty. Okay, any questions about that? We'll go into more detail about the i'tikaf when the hadith comes about it, inshallah. So the first hadith, like it says here, night prayers, yeah? So that's what we're going to be touching on. So I'll read that first. عن أبي هريرة رضي الله عنه أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم قال من قام رمضان إيمانا واحتسابا غفر له ما تقدم من ذنبه متفق عليه. Narrated Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu. Allah's Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, he who prays during the night in Ramadan with faith and seeking his reward from Allah will have his past sins forgiven. Okay, so let's break this hadith down now. Okay, Man qama Ramadan iman. So whosoever stands to pray during the nights of Ramadan, and the first condition is that it has to have iman. Okay, now when we say iman, what does that include? So number one is that a person accepts Allah to be his Lord. Okay, straightforward. You accept Allah to be the Lord, and that Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is his messenger. Number three, somebody accepts Islam to be his religion. Number four, when you have iman, you have to have iman that Allah has made the fasting of Ramadan compulsory. Number five, that you are expecting reward for your standing in Ramadan. You have to have iman in these particular things. And then he says ihtisaban, seeking the reward, seeking his reward. Now what this means is a person does it solely, sincerely for the sake of Allah, and he does not do it out of mere ritualistic actions, not ritualistic, perhaps more like habitual actions, or to show off. Rather, a person is doing it for the sake of Allah. So when a person has both of these, غُفِرَ لَهُ مَا تَقَدَّمَ مِنْ ذَنْبِهِ, then his previous sins will be forgiven. Now, according to the vast majority of the scholars, it's only referring to the minor sins, not the major sins. Okay, it's only referring to the minor sins and not the major sins. For the major sins, tawbah, repentance is necessary. However, there are modern day scholars that will say, because it has not specified minor sins, etc., that this includes all types of sins. But that's not the classical opinion. And my advice would be stick to the classical opinions of the scholars of the past, inshallah. Okay, any questions about that? No? Okay, so that particular hadith, it says, whosoever stands during the night of Ramadan whilst having iman and seeking Allah's reward, his sins will be forgiven. We find 3 hadith in the same wordings. So this is one of them. We have another one, instead of the word qama up there, if you can see, it says man sama, whosoever fasts during Ramadan whilst having iman and seeking the reward will have his past sins forgiven. And I based my khutbah on this last Friday that just went. So this is the first hadith I quoted in there. And the third one is man qama laylatul qadr. We'll come to that towards the end, but it's the same. It'll be the same explanation behind it. Whosoever stands during the night of Laylatul Qadr and has iman, etc., 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 all these things will apply. So one is for fasting. One is for, when we say night prayers, it could refer to tahajjud, qiyamul layl, and it could also be referring to tarawih also. Now, is there a difference between qiyamul layl and tahajjud? Can anyone remember?
Go to sleep and waking up.
Which one is which?
So Qiyamul Layl is not going to sleep, then Tahajjud.
Okay, so there's a difference between qiyamul layl and tahajjud. So if somebody after Isha does not go to sleep and then performs nafil prayers, that's called qiyamul layl. If somebody goes to sleep, wakes up, and then it's called tahajjud. They have the same reward more or less, or actually tahajjud is more virtuous than qiyamul layl. Why? Because there's more effort required. When you go to sleep, then a person becomes lazy and they don't want to get up. So you have to force yourself up, do wudu, perhaps it's cold water, etc., etc., etc. Yeah, there's more effort required. But this is the difference between the two. And this particular hadith is generic. It has not specified which salah. So tarawih will fall under this. Qiyamul layl will fall under this, as well as tahajjud. Okay? Yes, Hamad.
So regardless, the hadith where Allah descends, does that still apply to whatever salah you do during the night?
So that is time specific, not salah specific.
Oh, yeah.
It says Allah the Almighty descends in the last third of the night.
If you do qiyam last third of the night, then?
Sorry?
If you do qiyam last third of the night.
Last third of the night, yes. So that's the most virtuous time to do it, yes.
So Ramadan time is basically time, we're not doing tahajjud, we're doing qiyam if you're awake.
If you're awake, yes. Yes, Chef.
So it's not specifying last day of the night, it's just saying praying that any time of the night.
Yes, any time of the night. So it has not specified, it has to be the last half, or the last third, anything like that, as you can see in the translation. Yes.
And when we say night, it's from Maghrib to Fajr.
Usually, yes. So, Maghrib to Fajr, but normally speaking, when it speaks in this context, it would be after Isha. After Isha, up until beginning of Fajr time.
It's possible to perform both.
Yeah.
So you can do Qiyam.
You can do Qiyam, go to sleep, wake up, and then pray. So the sunnah obviously is of the Prophet ﷺ for Qiyam or Tahajjud is that he would do 8 rakahs, no more than that. But if somebody was to do it, they're allowed to do it.
So 8 rakat for Qiyam or Tahajjud?
Both. Between the two. Okay? So you find in the hadith that he would do 12 rakahs in the night. Why would it be 12? And Malik explain to me. Yes, he would include the witr. Who said that? MashaAllah. Allahumma razuq wa zawjatan salihah. Not yet, you have to get the answer right. So, witr also. So, again, actually, we'll discuss it now. So, in Ramadan, is it better to pray witr with the Imam or not?
Without.
With or without?
Without.
So you get the full reward then.
Of the whole night.
So, we find another hadith, Ibn Hajar has not mentioned it in this collection, that the Prophet ﷺ says that whosoever prays in the night with the Imam up until he has completed the prayer, then his previous sins will be forgiven. Okay, so it is better that we pray with the Imam. But if somebody decides not to, they're not blameworthy. Does that make sense? They're not blameworthy. And Alhamdulillah, there's a hadith which says La witran fil layl. There's no 2 witrs in the night, so you can only do your witr once. Can you? Okay, before I go into that discussion, I'm going to go tangents now. Yeah, I'm going to go on tangents now. So, Alhamdulillah, in our masjid, in the last 10 nights, we have 2 witrs, isn't it? We'll have one with the Tarawih, whoever wants to pray it, and then we'll have one with the Qiyam Layl. So, is that in contradiction to the hadith which says there's no 2 witrs in the night? No, because it's not referring to a jama'ah, it's referring to individuals. So, you can't perform it witr twice. Okay? Everybody understand that so far? Okay. Now, can somebody pray witr with the Imam in the first salah, and then when he does salam, you stand up and you add a rak'ah? Now, I know a few years back there's a big controversy over this because one of our Imams was doing that and people were saying, why is he making up things, blah, 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 and all this other stuff. Yeah? So I asked him about it, and he actually forwarded evidence to me that this was the practice of Ibn Umar at times, that he would stand up, and what they call a naqdul witr is to break the witr. So instead of making witr means odd, so instead of making it odd, he would break that and make it even. So he'd add a rak'ah. So in that way, you can join the Imam to the end and attain that reward. And then you can also do your witr at the end of the night, which is the suggested or the preferred way of the Prophet ﷺ. So normally he would delay the witr until the final prayer. Does everybody understand that so far? Okay, go on.
Is that more virtuous then? Because
What's that?
Because if you pray with the Imam.
So let's go back to a bit of history now. Yeah. So when it came with Umar ibn Khattab, remember Umar ibn Khattab, he started Tarawih. Yes, not the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Not the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. With the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, there was a few days which he led the companions in salah, and then he stopped leading them. Okay, he stopped leading them. Why? Because he said, I was afraid that it would become wajib upon you, and to stay away from that, I did not. He stopped leading them. Yeah, but at the time of Umar ibn Khattab, he came to the masjid and he saw different people praying in different pockets of Jama'ah, all over the place. So what did he do? He gathered everybody and he put them behind Ubay bin Ka'b radiallahu anhu. Okay, under one Imam, and that's where they started to do witr also in Jama'ah. Okay, so whoever is not able to wake up later on and pray the witr, pray with Imam. But also the Prophet ﷺ had given the hadith beforehand that stay with the Imam until he's finished. So what we can do is combine between the two. So if somebody, they know they're not going to be able to wake up and they have to they're going to go to sleep and then they're going to wake up just before suhoor, have their suhoor, go back to sleep because they've got work, etc., etc. They haven't got the time. Pray with the Imam. You're done. But if somebody knows, I will wake up and things like that, then my suggestion would be, pray the one extra rak'ah and then pray on witr afterwards. Does that make sense? Pray on witr afterwards. And again, if somebody decides to do the witr before the qiyam and tahajjud, there's no problem. It's not a problem. But the habit of the Prophet ﷺ was that he'd delay witr until the last prayer. Now, again, there's another whole question that comes to it, and I'm not going to go into the discussion, but I'm just going to touch on it. Is witr wajib or not? Okay, that's another whole question altogether. Is witr wajib or not? Do you have to pray witr? Huh?
Is it unlucky Salman?
Why unlucky Salman?
Alhamdulillah, I pray extra free.
He's praying to Allah, man. It could be the tipping point on the day of Judgment. Anyway, according to Imam Abu Hanifa, only Imam Abu Hanifa, okay, listen to me carefully. According to Imam Abu Hanifa, it's wajib. And then according to the other 3 Imams, and Imam Abu Yusuf and Imam Muhammad ibn Hassan al-Shaybani, not Salman al-Shaybani, Imam Muhammad ibn Hassan al-Shaybani, who is the 2 students of Imam Abu Hanifa, is the Sunnah prayer. Okay? It's a Sunnah prayer. So let me finish. And how did they come to this conclusion? Again, I said I'm not going to this discussion. It's just the way they evaluated the hadith and came to the conclusion. That's what it is. That's what I'm going to say to you. Yes?
If someone's going to say, like, the out of 3, but I also say sunnah as well.
Sunnah, yeah. Okay. Yes.
2 quick questions. So you know like how we do 3 rakat for with it. So we would do an extra rakat to make it 4.
Yeah.
So so we can do the with later.
Yeah.
Okay. And then the second question is, you know like how at the last 10 days we do qiyam in like a jamaat.
Yeah.
Yeah. So would that count the witr that we do with the qiyam al-layl as in congregation?
I'm confused. I do not
So
understand that
you
question.
know like we do Taraweeh.
Yeah.
At the end you say to do with the imam.
Yeah.
Right, but obviously the imam is, for example, you do Taraweeh, yeah? We all then do Qiyam al-Layl,
Yeah.
all of us with the imam.
Yeah.
And then the imam leaves the Qiyam al-Layl,
Yeah.
and then chooses to witr in
Yeah.
a Jamaat.
In Tarawih time or Qiyam al-Layl time?
Qiyam al-Layl.
Okay.
So does that count, is the reward of the praying with the imam with the count then?
I want to make the same face that he's making right now.
Wait, basically,
I've got no clue what you're saying. Look, so you're saying is in the last 10 nights we have Tarawih in Jama'ah, we also have Qiyam al-Layl in Jama'ah.
Yeah.
We have 2 witrs happening in the night, okay? Because, for example, if I'm leading Tarawih, I'm also going to lead the witr at Tarawih time. And then Dr. Hidayat Islam, he leads Qiyam al-Layl and he also does the witr. Okay? So, okay, now explain to me what your question is.
Oh, so okay.
I wouldn't do it twice.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
That's why they change sometimes. Obviously.
Yeah, that's when there's this.
Yeah, so I wouldn't lead it twice.
Yeah.
I don't need pray once. So even if I prayed at Tarawih time and I joined in Qiyam afterwards, either I would pray with you guys the witr, or I would and include one, or just not pray the witr at all. Just do the Qiyam only. Does that make sense?
Yeah, makes sense.
Okay. Can we move on? Yeah. Okay. Now I'm worried for time. Okay, Bismillah. Okay, so the next topic we're going to be discussing is worshipping and i'tikaf during the last 10 nights, okay? عن عائشة رضي الله تعالى عنها قالت كان رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم إذا دخل العشر أي العشر الأخيرة من رمضان شد مئزره وأحيا ليله وأيقظ أهله متفق عليه. Narrated Aisha رضي الله عنها. When the last 10 days of Ramadan began, Allah's Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam used to tighten his waist belt, i.e. occupy himself with the worship of Allah. Stay awake all night and awaken his family for night prayers. Okay, so this is more to do with motivation now, yeah? Just as a side note, in this particular book, Bulugh Al-Maram, he does not bring many motivating hadith because that's not the objective of the book. The objective of the book is to bring hadith which we can derive rulings from. But at times he does bring it in. So she is saying that when the last 10 nights used to come in of Ramadan, shadda mi'zarahu, he used to tighten his waist belt. Can anybody explain to me what that means?
Not have difficulty.
So he would not be intimate with his wives, with his spouses, okay? Because he was busying himself with the worship of Allah. He was not going down that way. And then he would stay awake all night and awaken his family for night prayers, which means that we should also awaken others and we should encourage others and bring them along with us if possible to the masjids and things like that, because this is what the Prophet ﷺ used to do. Okay, especially in the last 10 nights. Yes, you can eat it, just go ahead and eat it. He's ripping so slowly. وعنها أن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم كان يعتكف العشر الأواخر من رمضان حتى توفاه الله عز وجل ثم اعتكف أزواجه من بعده متفق عليه. Narrated Aisha radiallahu anha, when the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam intended i'tikaf, seclusion in the mosque for worship, he prayed the dawn prayer and then entered his place of seclusion. Okay, I'm going to come back to this hadith. Let's read the next one as well and then I'm going to explain. وعنها رضي الله تعالى عنها قالت كان النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم إذا أراد أن يعتكف صلى الفجر ثم دخل معتكفه متفق عليه. Okay. So in this particular hadith, it says that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when he would do i'tikaf every year in the last 10 nights, yeah, until Allah had taken him away, and then he says ثم اعتكف أزواجه من بعده. So he would enter into his place of seclusion. Now this particular hadith, the second one, it says that he went into his place of seclusion. Okay, no, what they've done is they've mixed up the two hadith. Okay, narrated Aisha radiallahu anha, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam used to engage in i'tikaf, seclusion in the mosque for worship during the last 10 days of Ramadan till Allah, who is great and glorious, took his soul. Then his wives engaged in i'tikaf after him, i.e. after his death, agreed upon. Now 571 should have been the translation of 570. They've got it the wrong way around. Okay? So in this particular book, they've got it the wrong way around. The one that talks about his wives, that should have been above, and 570, it should have been 571. I hope that makes sense. Okay, now in terms of i'tikaf, what's the ruling of i'tikaf? Do you have to do it? Do you not have to do it? Etc. etc. Okay, so according to the three schools, it is a sunnah act. Okay, if you do it, you've completed a sunnah. If you don't do it, no problem at all whatsoever, with the exception of the Hanafi school. The Hanafi school, they say, is something called sunnah kifaya. Sunnah kifaya in the last 10 nights of Ramadan. Sunnah kifaya means it's an communal sunnah, a communal sunnah, which means if one person doesn't do it, the entire community is blameworthy of abandoning the sunnah. Okay, the entire community will be in trouble and will be blameworthy for abandoning the sunnah. So at least one person has to do it, according to the Hanafis. At least one person. And according to the rest, it's just a, I don't want to say standard sunnah, but it's a sunnah act. Okay, that there's no conditions attached to it. Salman, you got us covered, is it? Jazakallah, man. Taking one for the team. Okay. How many communal sunnahs are there? I couldn't tell you if you're not applied.
Is that quite a lot?
I would assume so. So there'll be certain things that will have to be done. Like for example, having a jama'ah prayer in the masjid, things like that, or setting up a masjid, things like that.
One per mosque or just one community?
One community will be fine. Okay, so it's not necessarily restricted to mosque, but the community, yes.
So you know the Prophet, his house was next to, right?
His house was attached to it,
Would
yeah.
would he see his wife during the come?
We're going to come to that. We'll come to that. Okay. Okay. So the next discussion is when does a person go into i'tikaf? When does a person go into i'tikaf? What time does he have to enter the place of i'tikaf by? Okay. So if we read this hadith 570, okay, the translation, he prayed the dawn prayer and then entered his place of seclusion. Now, what we understand from this particular phrasing is that he started his i'tikaf from after Fajr. Yes? Does everybody understand that? However, this is not the mainstream opinion. Okay? And some scholars have taken this opinion, like Awza'i and Layth and things like that. But the mainstream opinion is that before the Maghrib of the 21st Ramadan, you have to go into the place of i'tikaf. And there's other evidences for it and things like that. So all four schools say that before the 21st Ramadan Maghrib, you have to be in your place of i'tikaf by that. So before Maghrib Adhan is given or Maghrib time starts, you have to be already in your place of i'tikaf. Now what does this particular hadith mean then, where it says the Prophet ﷺ, when he wanted i'tikaf, and he would pray and then enter into his place of i'tikaf. It means that he had a dedicated spot that he would use for his worship, for his seclusion. So be in the masjid, but this is my spot. Does that make sense?
Can someone do that? Generally?
Yeah, if somebody books it beforehand, this is my spot, you can do that. Even the salat time, we can do that. If somebody's sitting there first and they need to go to wudu, if they tell the person next to them or they leave their hat there or something, they're more entitled to that space than the next person that will come in.
Okay, so it makes sense with the front.
Okay, so in this particular part, the Prophet ﷺ, he went to his place of i'tikaf, where he would sit and do his personal worship. So after Fajr, for example, if his personal space was inside that room there, the storage room, he led the salah, he's gone there and he's doing his worship. This is what it's referring to. And all four schools say the night before you have to come in before that, okay? Okay. Okay, we'll continue inshallah. Okay, so the next part is just miscellaneous rulings of i'tikaf, okay? Okay, so before I go into the hadith, yes, you can talk in i'tikaf. You know, some people say you go into i'tikaf, you can't talk about anything, otherwise your i'tikaf is broken. It's actually makruh to remain silent in i'tikaf, very much disliked. So you can talk in i'tikaf. If a person conducts any business in i'tikaf, the i'tikaf is still valid. It does not break the i'tikaf. Okay?
Can you work from home in i'tikaf?
Can you work from home in i'tikaf? You can, but it'll be makruh. It'll be makruh. And it will take you away from the whole purpose of i'tikaf. So you're better off not doing it then. It could become disrespectful towards the masjid. Okay? You know, scholars, they quote Ibn Hazm. He's got this book where he's trying to collate all the opinions in which all the schools are unanimously agree upon that, and that he said they've agreed that your i'tikaf won't break if you conduct business. What I mean by business is like buying and selling. Okay, so if I was in i'tikaf and I said to Adam, can you go to Tesco's and buy me something, and I give you the money and whatnot, or you bought something to the masjid and I bought it off you, it won't break the i'tikaf. Okay. Sorry. Yeah. So if somebody wants to have food delivered to them, things like that, okay? So a person is able to do that. A person is able to leave the masjid when they have a need. Now, what is a need is tailored to that individual. So whatever your need is, that without which you can't go ahead. That's what a need is. Okay? Go on.
So, say for example, as a uni student,
Yeah.
is that what you need as well?
No. Because you can sit here and it won't cause you any physical harm and things like that.
Or work.
Or about work. But then you're not in the then, are you?
Medical appointment or something.
Yeah, like a medical appointment or somebody. Usually they would say back in those days, somebody needs to go to the toilet. The masjid did not have toilets in it. It'd be a location outside the masjid. Or somebody needs to go to their house to fetch food for themselves. And things like that. Okay? Okay. So let's read the hadith. وعنها قالت إن كان رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم يدخل علي رأسه وهو في المسجد فأرجله وكان لا يدخل البيت إلا لحاجة إذا كان معتكفا متفق عليه لفظ للبخاري. I used to be able to read Arabic faster than that before. I can't do anything more. Lost the practice. Narrated Aisha radiallahu anha. Huh?
You become Kaslan.
Yeah, that's what it is, man. Too much tajweed in it. Allah's Messenger sallallahu alayhi wasallam would put his head in my room. Okay, listen to this carefully, okay? This is Aisha radiallahu anha saying that Allah's Messenger sallallahu alayhi wasallam would put his head in my room while he was in the mosque. So he's in i'tikaf. So how you could imagine the house of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam is. Like if you go to Medina right now, did you go to the mosque expansion exhibition?
Yeah.
Did you go to that? Yeah. So you can actually see the development, how it happened. Yeah. So if this was the entire Masjid Nabawi, this particular part here, it's got a partition there, and that's his house, literally. Okay, that's his house. It's attached. So it's just literally like a wall there or a door there, which is separating the two buildings. Okay, so he would put his head there, and Aisha radiallahu anha, what did she say? And I would then comb it. So he's in i'tikaf, but he put his head in. So part of the body does not include the entire thing. So he put his head in, and then she would comb it. And he would never enter the house except for a need, if he was in i'tikaf. So if there was a need, then he'd go completely into the house. If there was no need, then he would not go into the house at all. Okay? So that question, can you see your spouse or something?
Yeah.
Yeah? Who asked that question? Yeah, you can see your spouse. Okay? But there are limits to it. It will come and I will explain it then. Okay? Next hadith.
Sure.
Yes.
You know, like certain mosques, like the Imam said, like there's like within the mosque, there's like a room for the Imam.
Yeah, so that's his home then, isn't it? That's not.
That doesn't cover the mosque.
No.
So he can't just go.
That's his place of residence here.
Okay. Even though it's in the mosque, he can't just go.
No. If he's doing anything else. Okay? So I say again, when a person has a need, it's tailored to that individual. Okay, we're not going to just say that it's a blanket policy for everybody. Certain things could be family members dying, for example, things like that. Yeah. Okay, let's continue with the next hadith. وعنها قالت السنة على المعتكف ألا يعود مريضا ولا يشهد جنازة ولا يمس امرأة ولا يباشرها ولا يخرج لحاجة إلا لما لا بد له منه ولا اعتكاف إلا في صوم ولا اعتكاف إلا في مسجد جامع رواه أبو داود ولا بأس برجاله إلا أن الراجح وقف آخره. Okay, let's read the next hadith as well and then I'll explain inshallah. وعن ابن عباس رضي الله تعالى عنهما أن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم قال ليس على المعتكف صيام إلا أن يجعله على نفسه رواه دارقطني والحاكم وراجح وقفه أيضا. Okay, narrated Aisha رضي الله عنها, the sunnah for one who is observing i'tikaf, seclusion in the mosque for worship, is not to visit a sick person, nor attend a funeral, nor touch or fondle. When it says fondle, it means to intimate a woman, one's wife, nor go out for any need except that which is an absolute necessity. Okay? There is no i'tikaf without fasting, and no i'tikaf except in congregational mosque. Okay, we've already discussed this here. And then Abu Dawud reported it, and its narrators are acceptable, except that the strongest opinion is the end of it, the last sentence, and I'll explain that to you, is mawquf, saying of a companion, and Aisha. So you know what it says? There is no i'tikaf without fasting. So Ibn Hajar is commenting that this particular phrase is not from the Prophet ﷺ, rather it's the words of Aisha. This is what he's saying. Okay? This is what he's saying. Let's just read the next hadith and then I'll start explaining a bit more. Narrated Ibn Abbas radiyallahu ta'ala anhuma, the Prophet ﷺ said, is it too close? Is that what it is? Fasting is that okay? Fasting is not incumbent on one engaged in i'tikaf, seclusion in the mosque for worship, unless he imposes it on himself. Reported by Darussalam and Hakim, the strongest opinion is that it is also mawquf, saying of a companion Ibn Abbas. Even though it says here, the Prophet ﷺ said, Ibn Hajar is making the comment that no, the Prophet ﷺ did not say this, rather it's the words of Ibn Abbas. So if you look at the two, it appears to be contradicting. Do you agree? Because the first one says that Aisha is saying that you have to fast. Ibn Abbas is saying no, you don't have to fast. Okay. Now, before I'm going to go into that, before I go into that discussion, just on hadith number 573. When a person is fast in i'tikaf, they shouldn't go out to visit a ill person. If somebody is dying, that's a different case altogether. Yeah? Equally, somebody should not go attend a janazah. Now, traditionally speaking, a janazah would take place usually in the graveyard, and then they'd be buried in the graveyard. Okay, it would not be in the masjid, traditionally speaking. I know in this country we do it in the masjid. Like even if you go like Bangladesh and things like that, they don't do it in the masjid. They have like a specific place for janazah, or they usually just do it in the, you know what the utan is? What do you call utan in English? Huh? Courtyard. They do it in the courtyard. And like I attended my dad's mother, my grandmother's janazah. We did it in the courtyard.
Or they like have dedicated spaces, not like each jamaat.
Yeah. So they've got dedicated spaces for janazah. So usually it wouldn't happen. But so it's, what here is referring to is not that if the janazah is taking place in the mosque, you don't attend it. No, it means if it's outside, you don't go out. Okay, but if it's happening in the masjid, no problem at all. If the ill person is in the masjid, you can go visit him, no problem. If he's one of the mu'takif, one of the people in the i'tikaf, no problem. Visit him, speak to him. You get rewarded for it. Yeah. Okay. And this is and no touch, no fondle a woman. Yeah. So touching or being intimate will actually break one's i'tikaf. Okay. So it's not only, she's saying it's not from the sunnah to do this, but these two things will actually break a person's i'tikaf, because Allah says in the Quran, Surah Baqarah, ayah number 187, وَلَا تُبَاشِرُوهُنَّ وأنتم so ولا تباشروهن, and don't be intimate with them. وأنتم عاكفون, اعتكاف عاكفون, whilst you are in اعتكاف في المساجد, in the mosque. Okay, so whilst you're in i'tikaf, you cannot be intimate. So if somebody does it, you've opposed the ayah of the Quran, your i'tikaf is broken. Okay, and that's unanimous. Everybody agrees on that. Everybody agrees on that. Now, the place of i'tikaf, sorry, everybody agrees that i'tikaf has to take place in the masjid. Okay, I know in our culture some women think it's okay to do i'tikaf in the house and things like that. No, it's not allowed. It has to be in the masjid in which jama'ah is taking place. Okay, so you can't seclude yourself in a room in the house and do i'tikaf. No scholar have said it's permissible. I haven't found any classical scholars saying that. Everybody is saying that it's muttafaq. Everybody unanimously agrees it has to be in the masjid. Okay. If sisters, if you got any questions, just put your hand up, inshallah, and I'll ask. Okay. So the second thing is, when somebody goes into i'tikaf.
Well, if it's an accidental, for example, like let's say your wife comes off food.
Okay.
Accidentally touch her hand.
So if it's accidental contact,
Like
if somebody has lust or intended behind it, then it will break your i'tikaf. If it's just brushing or things like that, then it's fine. It won't break it. Okay? Yes.
In another hadith number 570, it says that then his wife engaged in i'tikaf after him
So she did i'tikaf
in the mosque.
in the mosque. So they would have designated areas for it. So whether they put up what do you call them? Partitions or whatever. But they didn't do it in the houses. They didn't do it in the houses. Yeah, I should have commented over there. I just remembered now, that's why I said it. Yes.
So women can't do i'tikaf.
They can do i'tikaf, yes.
Is there a requirement?
It's not a requirement, no.
And the communal one that you mentioned before, does a female member have to do it, or is it just a male member?
So, generally speaking, if a female was to come into i'tikaf, they would be expected to have a mahram close by. Okay? And i'tikaf has to take place at such a time where they're not expecting to be on their menses and things like that, because they're not allowed in the masjid at that time and things like that. Does that make sense?
So a woman can't do i'tikaf without a mahram?
Yes. Okay. Okay. So the next point of discussion is, do you have to fast whilst in i'tikaf? Okay. So when we say do you have to fast whilst in i'tikaf, we're gonna exclude Ramadan i'tikaf now. Why? Because in Ramadan you have to fast anyway. Okay. Nafil i'tikaf. We're talking about nafil i'tikaf. Now, if somebody does nafil i'tikaf, when I say nafil, an optional i'tikaf, so i'tikaf outside of Ramadan, the sunnah one, you have two types. You have nafil and you have the i'tikaf of vow. If somebody makes a vow that I'm going to do i'tikaf such as it happens, then that one becomes wajib, okay? And the other one is nafil, optional. Now, what's the minimum amount of i'tikaf a person can do? So most scholars would say the minimum amount a person can do is 1 day, 1 night. With the exception, we have Imam Muhammad ibn Hassan al-Shaybani. Again, not Salman al-Shaybani. Just have to point it out today. Sheikh's enjoying this one. He says i'tikaf can be as small as a moment, as 1 minute, 2 minutes, however much time you're having. You're in the masjid. If you make the intention of i'tikaf, he's saying that it's fine. And inshallah, we're hopeful that Allah will accept it if we make the intention also. Nevertheless, according to the Hanafis and the Malikis, if a person has made a vow of i'tikaf, then they will have to accompany it with fasting. Okay, do you understand that so far? And if it's a nafil one, then so the Malikis, they say all i'tikaf has to be accompanied with fasting, and the Hanafis join them only in the i'tikaf of vows. Does that make sense? I don't think anybody makes vows of i'tikaf anymore anyway. Well, I haven't heard anyone make that vow.
It's harder to do that though, because if I want to do i'tikaf in the mosque now.
Yeah, most mosques won't let you stay unless it's Ramadan. Okay? And then you have the other two schools here. The Shafis and the Hanbalis, they say you don't need to make, you don't have to fast at all. Okay, whether it's i'tikaf of vow or not, or nafal, it doesn't matter. You don't have to fast. Yes.
Do you have any incidents or process of doing i'tikaf outside of Ramadan?
I don't know. I don't know. Look it up in here. Let me know, inshallah. One of the years he didn't do i'tikaf, so the following year he made it up by 20 days in Ramadan. But I don't know outside of Ramadan. I'm not sure. I don't recall anything.
Sure. Do you know the Fiqh of Ramadhan? Does it have to be 10 days?
Does it have to be? So if you want to attain the sunnah what the Prophet used to do, that would have to be 10 days. But if you do anything less than that, it will fall under nafal and not the sunnah. Okay? It will fall under the nafal and not the sunnah. Okay, so coming back to the point I said before, it has to be a masjid in which jama'ah is taking place. So that is the opinion of the Hanafis and the Hanbalis. And the Malikis and the Shafi'is say, no, any place in which salah takes place. Like a musalla. You know what musalla is? So, you know those, what was it called again? Train station, no, service station mosques. You can do it in them. That's fine with the Shafis and the Malikis. And the Hanafi and the Hanbalis, surprisingly, they agree on one thing together. These are rare occurrences. So they say it has to be a masjid which has an appointed imam and an appointed muazzin. Okay, are we happy with all that? Any more questions about the i'tikaf? Yes.
Sure. Do you know for people that are physically incapable of fasting, so they pay fidya instead, for example?
Yeah.
And they still perform i'tikaf because it's still valid?
Yeah, because they're excused anyway. They're excused. Yes, sure.
For those who break the i'tikaf, is it a kafara?
Is there a kafara on them? Oh, I haven't looked into that actually. But as far as I can remember, what I can tell you the Hanafi opinion. Hanafi says yes, you have to make it up. It's a debt now.
On top of the fasting kafara.
It's a debt now, but I couldn't tell you what the other three madhabs.
So, like you said in the Hanafi, you said you have to make kafara for that.
I feel like we had
Yeah.
Does that mean we need to on top of the fasting
that's what I was
So it become a wajib fast. Actually, I don't know. I'll have to check it out. It remind me, Sheikh, and I'll have a look. Okay.
So, in Ramadan time, because sometimes we can't do the 10 days. Let's say I want to do 7 days. It becomes enough, is it?
It's nothing, yeah. Because the sunnah is 10, isn't it? Sunnah is 10. But it's still blessed time, blessed environment, with the intention of becoming closer to Allah. So don't get disheartened by that.
So if I do break it, do I have to make up with the Hanafi say?
The nafal?
Yeah.
No nafal. But let me double check it.
Sorry,
I wasn't thinking about the kafaras and stuff, and so I didn't go looking into that. Yeah, what's up?
just like you said, the sunnah is 10 days apart from Ramadan, and if you do anything else, it's nafal. Does that mean like if you do the nafal apart from Ramadan, will you get more reward than if you just do it out of Ramadan?
Yeah. So certain deeds can be boosted due to either place, makan, or zaman, either the place or the time. So if certain things are done in Makkah, for example, in Masjid al-Haram and Masjid al-Nabawi, it'll have more value than outside of those areas. Equally, certain times, so whether it's Ramadan or the first 10 days of Muharram, or the time of Arafah and things like that. So it can differ from that from time and place. Okay.
So i'tikaf is like for Maghrib to Maghrib is considered a day.
All the way to Maghrib. Yeah, that's
So a day. So for example, if I was to accidentally leave the mosque for whatever reason, or touch the woman for whatever reason, and I lose that one.
accidentally touched the woman.
Listen.
Okay.
And so that day now is gone. Yeah. And so then I've done 9 days worth of i'tikaf
Yeah.
during Ramadan.
Yeah.
Does it become nafil because of that mistake?
It's a very complicated question. I don't know.
I get that. That's the question.
I understand what he's saying.
Yeah, like because my intention was 10, but then I broke in 1, and now it's 9. Have I lost this?
So I'm not sure. Maybe I'll have to double check. I'll have to check it up because it's a very specific scenario. So the question would basically be then is, if I broke my i'tikaf in the middle, intentionally, you say,
Let's say both unintentional and intentional.
Unintentionally, usually Allah won't hold you responsible for that.
So it's okay.
And it's like unintentionally if somebody eats.
Yeah.
Yeah. Your fast is still intact, you carry on the rest of the day. But if somebody intentionally did it, then I would assume so, but I'd have to double check it, is that you've lost your status of sunnah because you broke your fast.
Yeah.
If you continue, it'll be nafal. I would assume, but I'll have to double check it. Okay.
Is it lunch?
What's that? No, that should be in another 10 minutes.
No, it's Sunday's full.
Sunday, man.
Ahead of time.
Allah causing confusion in that. Okay, let's continue, yeah? Okay, now we're going to be speaking about Laylatul Qadr, inshallah. Anybody want to recite Surah Al-Qadr for us?
Shamsul, please. Shamsul.
It's okay. Alright, let's continue. So Laylatul Qadr. وعن ابن عمر رضي الله تعالى عنهما أن رجالا من أصحاب النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم أروا ليلة القدر في المنام في 7 الأواخر فقال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم أرى رؤياكم قد تواءت في 7 الأواخر فمن كان متحريها فليتحرها في 7 الأواخر متفق عليه. وعن معاوية بن أبي سفيان رضي الله تعالى عنهما أن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم قال في ليلة القدر ليلة 27 رواه أبو داود وراجح وقفه وقد اختلف في تعيينها على 40 قولا أوردتها في فتح الباري. So narrated Ibn Umar radiallahu anhu, some of the Prophet's Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam's companions saw in their dreams that Laylatul Qadr was among the last 7 nights of Ramadan. Okay, some of them saw this dream. Hence Allah's Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, I see that your dreams agree regarding the last 7 nights. Okay? Therefore, whoever is to seek it should do so during the last 7 nights. Okay? So in the last 7 nights, how many odd nights do you have in that? 3, is it? 5.
23,
21st, 23rd.
In the last 7 nights.
4.
4, is it?
27.
Okay, whichever one, yeah. Okay, and then next hadith narrated Abu Muawiyah bin Abi Sufyan. With regard to Laylatul Qadr, the Prophet ﷺ said, it is the 27th night. Okay, everybody's probably thinking, yeah, okay. We understand where everything comes from now. Reported by Abu Dawud. Now, Ibn Hajar, he's making a comment. The strongest opinion is that it is mawquf, saying of a companion. Meaning, the Prophet ﷺ did not say this. So Ibn Hajar is continuing with his comment. 40 different sayings were mentioned regarding the exact night of Laylatul Qadr. Meaning there's 40 different opinions as to when Laylatul Qadr takes place. Okay? And I mentioned them in Fathul Bari, explanation of Sahih Bukhari of Hafiz ibn Hajar. So he's got a commentary of Sahih Bukhari called Fathul Bari, and he's saying, look, I've mentioned over there, I'm not going to repeat it here again. This is what he's saying, okay? Now, if you look at these hadith, number one is, we need to understand why, or what is Laylatul Qadr here? And why is it called Laylatul Qadr? Okay, so the word Al-Qadr could mean decree, and I've seen some translations says the night of decree, and others say the night of power, and perhaps the night of power is a greater, is a better translation than the night of decree. Okay, even though both translations can be made. Okay, meaning this is a powerful night. And why is it that this night is considered to be a powerful night? And the virtues of many, and again, Ibn Hajar is not going to go into these virtues and things like that, because that's not his objective of this book. So we just to mention a few, this night is far greater than 83 years, 1,000 months. So that's one reason it's a powerful night. The Quran was revealed in this night. Number 3, the angels, they descend on this night and they bring the blessings with them. تَنَزَّلُ الْمَلَائِكَةُ وَالْرُوحُ فِيهَا بِإِذْنِ رَبِّهِمْ. The angels descend and they bring the blessings with them, and سَلَامٌ هِيَ حَتَّى مَطْلَعِ الْفَجْرِ, and peace descends upon the entire earth on these nights. Okay, so that's number 1 here. Number 2, okay, let's just wait for that to finish.
Go charger.
What's wrong? Charger on you. Oh my god. How many you got?
10%. Farad, brother. Shout out Farad.
I don't know who the person is.
Just him. Just him. Just Farad.
Oh, no, that's gonna be on the thingy though.
People join us.
What's happening, mate?
Sit up. Sit up.
Where people joined? Where people?
Maybe only Imam Malik's class here, he'd kick you out a long time ago. He'd banish you from Masjid Nabawi.
Stop imagining.
Who's that?
Because he's like down in
Sheikh
it.
Saleh Hussein will come.
Huh?
Sheikh Saleh Hussein.
Yeah? What do you do?
You start shouting at this.
I know. Imam Malik would kick you out. He'd like, don't come back to the masjid.
What do you say? In the Prophet's masjid, you're reading the hadith of the Prophet Sallallahu It's a story.
Just sweet.
Do I want a sweet? No.
Stop.
Hmm?
It's bicep to you, Shams.
Huh? What do you say?
This is biceps. It's bicep TV Shams. Right, mate?
I think we're gonna have to continue after Salam.
Bye bye. Kita kabur. Khani lagi ya you. इसको खानी है सो okay?
You told him to do that, is it?
Yeah.
I think we're gonna have to continue after Salam.
Yeah, that's fine.
You know when Aisha was performing, did he was he on his lap? Was he on her lap?
Did you put his head on your lap?
When?
When he was in the car?
I don't know.
But
It hasn't specified that.
would he have touched her then, or would she have touched him?
There would have been
Yeah.
contact.
Yeah.
She's combing his head.
That's what I'm saying.
But it's not
Adam.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah.
intimate.
So that's my point. So
Or it's not lust in it.
But
And not every contact with husband and wife is always full of lust and desire.
Yes,
Just to
Adam.
clarify.
hey, listen, man.
Why did the Shafi say that if you touch a woman then your wudu breaks?
That's because of the Quran ayah.
What's that?
This is Quran ayah.
Okay.
يا أيها الذين آمنوا إذا قمتم إلى الصلاة فاغسلوا وجوهكم وأيديكم إلى المرافق وامسحوا برؤوسكم وأرجلكم إلى الكعبين وإن كنتم جنبا فاطهروا وإن كنتم مرضى وعلى سفر.
So Maida.
Thank you for your concern.
and then let's be honest, it's not about
Is it
But
ayah?
I don't get keep this
Yeah.
no, I'm just
So there you go, okay, okay.
وإن كنتم جنبا فاطهروا وإن كنتم مرضى وعلى سفر فعدة
Even if you
Let's go to
Ramadan,
Fahd.
you still be fasting, so you can't do any of it tonight.
I will be.
no, but
Well, Huzaifa's already in it, so
he says
Sheikh.
But still, Ramadan when you fasting.
Okay, inshallah, we'll continue now, yeah? We'll continue now, yeah? Okay, so let's just analyze this hadith very quickly, okay? So, in this particular hadith, it says... It is done, yeah? Finish the map? Thank you. The companions, they saw a dream, and it was in the last 7 nights. And you guys said there was 4 odd nights, okay? And in the next hadith, Muawiyah radiallahu anhu, he says that it was the 27th night. And obviously, Hajar has commented to say that this is most likely the saying of Muawiyah, not the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Anyway, nevertheless, there are other hadith which can be found in Bukhari itself, Muslim, and throughout the entire collections of hadith, which will then say, seek it in the last 10 nights, seek it in the odd nights of the last 10 nights. And then some of them have specified slightly more, or has, what's the word, man? Restricted slightly more. So you have 23rd night, 24th, 25th, and 27th. So there's loads of hadith about it. Okay? And because there's so many hadith about it, we can't pinpoint and say that this is the only one. Because that means we have to exclude the rest. So you have this concept when it comes to hadith studies, is when you have conflicting hadith. And it comes to the point where we can no longer give a verdict. So this usually wouldn't refer to issues of fiqh. If it was issues of fiqh, it's a completely different chapter altogether. But what would happen is, how would you reconcile it?
Flick the warning.
So you'd make a narrative which applies to all of them. Then what we can say is that in this particular situation, the Prophet ﷺ, either he was informed that this is within these 3 nights, but then he was informed that it could be more than that, or he looked at the individual and he advised that person. One of the opinions within those 40 opinions that Ibn Hajar is talking about, Laylatul Qadr changes year to year. So it's not going to be one specific odd night every single year of Ramadan. So in one year, this year it could be the 21st night, and last year it could have been the 25th night. So it changes. So perhaps in that particular year, it was at that specific night. So can you see how it changes? The opinion can change. Okay, you first, go on.
How does that work though? If it's changing, correct me if I'm wrong, I thought like Quran came down that day, didn't it?
Yes, so that particular night, it came down, but the virtues of the night can alternate.
Okay.
Is there hadith to back up the alternative nights?
I'd have to go through Ibn Hajar's thing.
One more thing is one, Chef. You know when you said seek, how do you seek Laylatul Qadr?
Okay, so this is a very good question. So there's a lot of explanation to this. Why we don't know specifically which night it is, the hikmah behind it, the fa'idah behind it is so that it forces us to worship every single night and not just that one particular night. If we come to know that it's only the 27th night, as some people believe it to be, and there are some scholars out there who actually say this. I believe Imam Shafi'i is also of the opinion, or he says most likely it's this night, most likely. But I'll have to reference that. I remember Sheikh Jubal telling me that. Okay, so I can't give you a reference from the top of my head. Yes? 21st, is it? I remember Sheikh Jubal telling me 27th night. Anyway, whichever one. But the thing is, the whole point is hidden from us, is so that we seek it every single night, and we don't specify that one night. We worship Allah every night, every single night of the odd nights, to seek that night. That's what it means by seeking. Not, take a telescope out or something and see if you can see angels coming down or whatever, yeah? Okay, that's not what it's referring to. But it means you worship Allah during these nights. Okay, yes, Sheikh.
Sheikh.
Trust me, you're the only Sheikh here.
Is that why the Prophet would tighten his belt?
Yes.
Seek that night?
So, yeah, coming back to that hadith. So, he would tighten his waistband, and then he'd worship every single night in search for Laylatul Qadr. And then obviously the virtues of Laylatul Qadr then kick in. Okay, any other questions?
One last one.
Yes, go on.
So you said some people believe that it's this day or it's that night. Is that wrong then? If they add the
Most people do it from ignorance. Yeah, so we don't blame them, but we should educate them.
Okay, even if you try to educate someone, they still reject it. Like,
If somebody is given clear-cut hadith, Quran and hadith, and they want to reject it, then obviously they're rejecting Quran and hadith as it were.
So why do we do it in the mosque?
Why do we do it in the mosque?
Yeah, why do we over exemplify 27 in 21?
Some companies have that opinion, didn't they?
Say again?
Some companies
Yeah, some companies have that opinion. Look, Muawiyah had that opinion.
Yeah, but we just discussed it's better to do it just
It's better to do the 10, yes.
So why?
So you maximize on what opportunities you have. People are available that day, they will make the effort to come.
Why does the mosque practice that instead of focusing on the 27?
Instead of, okay, if you want to go into what does the mosque do that, you're going to have to do it outside of class. Okay? What did you say? Huh?
Would you try
Oh,
to
man.
highlight the ambiguity?
I didn't expect that from you. Huh? Sorry, yes.
So like there's like a flavor of it, just like the mighty power being ambiguous, So certain groups would say to pray on the 27th.
Yeah.
But there's also a blessing just to like not know whichever day is your one is seeking. I'm looking for mighty power, but it could be any of these last days. So
Exactly.
It could be hearted to everyone, and you might get the reward because people thought it was this day, but you just put everything into every day.
Yeah, so you give it your all every night instead of that one night.
I heard somewhere, I can't recall now, but someone saying that it could be different for individuals, different nights for different individuals.
Okay, I haven't heard that one before. If you can reference it, then I'd be quite happy. Huh? Okay, let's continue now, yeah? Okay, let's continue inshallah. I've got 2 more hadith there until the end of this inshallah, and then I think we'll have to come back after salah just to go over 3 more hadith, which is to do with sadaqatul fitr, away from this discussion of fasting in Ramadan. Okay. وعن عائشة رضي الله تعالى عنها قالت قلت يا رسول الله أرأيت إن علمت علمت قبل أي الحسب أي I think it's a mistake. أي ليلة القدر ما أقول فيها قال قولي اللهم إنك عفو تحب العفو فاعف عني رواه الخمسة غير أبي داود وصححه الترمذي والحاكم. Okay, narrated Aisha radiallahu anha, I said, O Allah's Messenger, tell me if I know which night is Laylatul Qadr. Okay, what supplication should I say in it? Okay, before we go to the next part, when she says, tell me if I know which night is Laylatul Qadr, this tells us that it's possible to know which night is Laylatul Qadr. Otherwise, the Prophet ﷺ would have told her, you're never going to know when Laylatul Qadr is. Yeah? Does everybody understand what I'm leading to? Okay? Why did the Prophet ﷺ stop her from that? Okay? So she is saying that if I come to know which night is Laylatul Qadr, what should I say in it? So Laylatul Qadr will have signs. And I think I mentioned a few, isn't it? So the angels coming down, there will be a feeling of peace throughout the entire world. Salamun hiya hatta matla'i al-fajr. Some of the hadith will mention, you open up Sahih Muslim and other books, the sun, when the sun will rise that morning, you won't feel the rays of it, things like that. So there are signs for it. So is it possible to know when Laylatul Qadr is or not? Yes, it is possible to know. But does that mean that every single individual will be able to see it and recognize it and acknowledge when Laylatul Qadr is? No. Allah could choose certain people that they will know, okay, today was Laylatul Qadr. So it could be, so if we use this particular understanding, when Muawiyah is saying that 27th night is Laylatul Qadr, he had that feeling. So remember, it will be a person's ijtihad. I'm having a feeling that today is Laylatul Qadr. I've seen these signs.
Got a question.
After. But that does not necessarily mean that this is what the Prophet ﷺ said. Does that make sense also? Okay, so now she's saying, if I come to know when Laylatul Qadr is, what dua should I make? So he says that make this dua, and everybody should make an effort to memorize this dua if you don't already know it. Allahumma innaka afoon, oh Allah, you are forgiving. Tuhibbul afwa, you love to forgive, or love forgiveness. Fa'afu anni, so forgive me. So the particular word that's used here is afu. Now afu is one step higher than maghfirah. Maghfirah means to forgive, but maghfirah would usually mean that you forgive but you don't forget. There's still a record of it. And afu is a forgiveness in which you forgive and forget. Meaning it's completely erased from your book of deeds, that it's not even there to be looked at. Does that make sense? So maghfirah, the record is still there. If somebody's got a criminal record, it doesn't matter if you got out of jail and it's been like 20 years, you still got a record. Does that make sense?
So would it be like equivalent to like a pardon, so that they can really erase it?
Yeah, it's as if though it hasn't happened. So, I mean, she's saying about Laylatul Qadr, let's read it throughout the entire year. Okay? Allahumma innaka afuun tuhibbul afwa fa'afu anni. And if obviously, you probably hear fa'afu anna as well, but that is when you're doing in jama'ah, when you're doing witr and things like that, that refers to everybody else. Okay, any questions about that? No?
There's a question here.
What was the question?
Ali Farhad is asking, where is the best to search for Laylatul Qadr? Is it in the seclusion of the home or in the masjid? Is the amount of reward different?
So it depends what the actual worship is. So if the worship and where a person feels more sincere, okay. So one thing, so last week's halaqah, I didn't go into mentioning and talking about it, is we believe that Makkah, Medina are to be the best locations on the face of the earth. They themselves are the best. And Ibn Taymiyyah, Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah in Al-Majmu' al-Fatawa, he's got a fatwa, he says, but that does not necessarily mean it's the best for everyone. Because if somebody goes to Makkah and Medina, commits sin, it's not a good place for him. But that doesn't devalue Makkah and Medina. But if it's better for him to stay at home in Swansea and he does more worship there, then that's the best place for him, for that individual. Okay? But Makkah and Medina is still the best place on the face of the earth. So they themselves are the best. But what's the best for me could be something different. Okay? So you look at what's more practical and more relevant to what will bring me to more obedience. Does that make sense? So equally, if somebody feels that if they are in their house and they do worship for Allah, they will be more sincere, then that will be better for them. If they believe they'll come to the masjid and they get motivated when other people are reading. Like for example, myself, I'll give my example. When I was a student in his class, and maybe Sheikh Huzaifa and Sheikh Usama here can relate, I did not like sitting in a room by myself and reading. I didn't like that. I liked when everybody else is reading. You just felt like a completely different energy. I don't know if you agree with that, Sheikh. Yeah, it's a completely different energy. Everybody's reading together. You know, you feel the brotherhood. You feel motivated and things like that. So it's up to the individual. So whichever situation they find themselves to be more sincere, go with that, inshallah. Okay, I think we'll stop here. We've got one more hadith left, the 3 mosques, and then we move on to Sadaqatul Fitr. So it's okay if everybody comes back after Salah, inshallah, and then we'll continue with that. Yeah. Okay. So
Question: is the dua specific to Laylatul Qadr?
huh?
Is this dua specific to Laylatul Qadr?
It's recommended in Laylatul Qadr, but it's not necessarily specific to Laylatul Qadr.
I've got a question.
You have loads of
Which one you
Quick question. Do you know with Afu and Maghfirah, if you're asking for a
Wassalamu ala rasulihil kareem amma ba'd. Let's continue, inshallah. We've got a few more hadith left and then we're done. Okay. Now, this is the final hadith of the book of fasting of Ibn Hajar. So what he's included is a discussion about the 3 mosques, okay? And he's brought a hadith. وعن أبي سعيد الخدري رضي الله تعالى عنه قال قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم لا تشد الرحال إلا إلى 3 مساجد المسجد الحرام ومسجدي هذا والمسجد الأقصى متفق عليه. Narrated Abu Sa'id al-Khudri radiyallahu anhu, Allah's Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, do not set out on a journey except to 3 mosques. أي المسجد الحرام at Mecca, my masjid, meaning Masjid Nabawi in Medina, and Masjid Al-Aqsa mosque in Jerusalem, okay, in Palestine. Agreed upon. Okay, can anyone take a guess what's the relevance of mentioning this hadith with fasting or siyam or anything? So have a good look at it. What do you think could be the relevance?
Favoritizing
Favoritizing mosques
mosques to do it the covenant.
to do itikaf. Do you want to expand on that?
So like in Birmingham or like bigger cities where they got multiple mosques, people fight for places to have it in certain mosques. Is that
Okay, not exactly. Salman, you had a
Yeah, it's flopped.
it flopped, is it? Okay.
So I thought the
Sheikh,
I don't know.
Can I guess? It's probably a bad guess.
go on.
So the rewards are greater.
The rewards are great in those masjids. Okay.
Do an itikaf in those masjids, you get.
Do itikaf in those masjids.
get great
Okay.
reward.
Not that. You guys want to take a guess? No. Anybody else?
Any clue?
The hadith is there, man. That is the biggest clue I can give you.
And that's it.
Okay. So what this hadith is telling us, number 1, is a person is not allowed to undertake a religious journey except for these 3 mosques. Okay? Now when I say religious journey, I mean to visit a mosque. Okay? Expecting higher reward. Okay? That's a very important point. So if somebody made an intention that I'm going to go to Turkey and Istanbul and visit the Blue Mosque and I will get more reward for praying in that mosque, that is not allowed. It's not permissible. Okay? If somebody's gone there for holiday, vacation, whatever, and the Blue Mosque was there, they went and prayed in it, that's fine, no problem at all whatsoever. Okay? So somebody can't undertake a journey towards a mosque with the expectation of higher reward other than these 3 mosques. Okay? What's the reward for praying in Masjid al-Haram? 100,000, yeah? And then praying in Masjid al-Nabawi? 1,000. And praying in Masjid al-Aqsa? 500, yeah? So the Prophet ﷺ has specified reward for these masjids. So to make a journey to any other masjid in the world, expecting higher reward than even your local masjid, then that's wrong. That's not allowed. Okay, that kind of journey is not allowed. But if somebody is making a journey, for example, I'm going to go to Al-Azhar Mosque in Cairo to seek knowledge, that's fine, because you're not going with the intention that I'm going to get further of more rewards over there compared to my local masjid. Okay. Now, how this relates to this subject or the Kitab al-Siyam is nobody should make the intention to travel to another masjid to do i'tikaf in there with the intention that my reward of i'tikaf will be higher than my local mosque, except for these 3 mosques. If somebody goes with the intention, you know what, my friends are there, closer to home or whatever else, facilities are better, that's fine. But if somebody makes an intention that the reward is going to be greater there, that i'tikaf itself will be greater in terms of the reward, then in that situation, that's not allowed. This is what Ibn Hajar is trying to say. But the strange thing is, this is what the scholars are assuming by adding this hadith into this chapter. This is what the scholars say. We think this is why he's added it. They haven't got a clear-cut answer from him. He hasn't given the reason. So they're assuming this. Okay? Which I think sort of makes sense also. It makes sense because he's speaking about i'tikaf all this time and spoke about Laylatul Qadr. So now to bring this hadith does sort of make sense. Okay? So, if you do get the opportunity to go do i'tikaf in Masjid Haram, by all means go. Masjid Nabawi and Masjid Al-Aqsa, do it. But don't think that if I go to I don't know, the Cambridge Mosque, I'm going to get more reward than Swansea Mosque. No, it doesn't work like that. Every other mosque is equal. Only these 3 mosques stand out compared to the rest. Okay? So that also includes like Masjid Al-Qiblatayn, Masjid Quba, in terms of i'tikaf. Okay? Okay, yes.
In terms of like activities done in that mosque, or like there might be like lectures, Quran classes.
Yes. So that's why I emphasize the word the actual i'tikaf. Yes, you can enhance your i'tikaf with additional activities. So you're going for the i'tikaf with the intention, obviously, that I'm going to get the reward for i'tikaf. It's the same, but I'm going to do other additional worship. So if one masjid is doing, I don't know, Quran classes, and they've got Hadith classes happening during the i'tikaf, and they have lectures happening, and one masjid is just like, just sleep and wake up and do your own salah. Yeah, that's fine, because you don't think the i'tikaf, because the masjid itself is greater in reward. No. Does that make sense? Okay, this is what scholars assume that Ibn Hajar is trying to point out to us. And it sort of makes sense also. Inshallah. Okay, any questions about that? Can we move on? Okay, so now alhamdulillah we've completed the book of fasting, and what I've added at the end is Sadaqatul Fitr. So this is actually not a part of the book of fasting, but rather it's a part of Kitab al-Zakat, the book of Zakat. Okay, so he's got a chapter in there where he talks about Sadaqatul Fitr, and it's only 3 hadith. Okay, I'm going to try my best to go through these as quick as possible, inshallah. Oh no, where's my notes? I've lost my notes. Okay, let's do it. وعن ابن عمر رضي الله تعالى عنهما قال فرض رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم زكاة الفطر صاع من تمر أو صاع من شعير على العبد والحر والذكر والأنثى والصغير والكبير من المسلمين وأمر بها أن تؤدى قبل الخروج الناس إلى الصلاة متفق عليه ولابن عدي والدارقطني بإسناد ضعيف أغنوهم عن الطواف هذا اليوم. Narrated Ibn Umar radiyallahu ta'ala anhuma. Allah's Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam made compulsory, okay? The Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam made compulsory as the Zakatul Fitr upon a slave, a free man, a Muslim and a female, the young and the old among the Muslims. Okay? So how many categories of people is it compulsory upon? slave, free, male, female, young and old. 6 different categories is included within this. A sa', about 2.5 kilograms. Okay, remind me what a sa' is. 4 muds. Okay, so remember last time I bought that container. Yes, I had a prop with me, Sheikh. And so it's 4 of those equals 1 sa'. Okay, of dried dates or a sa' of barley. He ordered. He ordered that this should be distributed before the people went out to the Eid al-Fitr prayer. Okay, so the Prophet Ibn Umar is saying the Prophet he made a fard, so he made it compulsory, and not only that, he's given us the categories of people that it's compulsory upon, and what they should be giving as well. Okay, 3 things. Ibn Adi and Darussalam reported through a weak chain of narrators, relieve them, meaning the poor, of the need to go around begging during this day of Eid al-Fitr. So this is basically just trying to show us the hikmah behind as to why Sadaqatul Fitr has been ordained or has been put in place. Okay. Okay, so now when it says farada, it has become compulsory. Everybody considers to be fard, like a fard salah, with the exception of who? Wait, is everybody wrong? The Hanafis. Okay, so the Hanafis, and it's a very minute difference or very subtle difference. They say it's not fard, it's wajib. Okay, it's not fard, it's wajib. You want me to go to explain the difference between the two, or should we just leave it?
Yes, please, Sheikh.
For the viewers.
For the viewers. Allahu Akbar. Okay. Next year. Okay, so basically, if something is fard, if somebody fard and wajib, according to the Hanafis, yeah, so Hanafis are the only ones that differentiate between fard and wajib. Nobody else does. The other schools, if they say fard or if they say wajib, means the same thing. Okay? When the Hanafis say fard and wajib, the difference is that a fard act, if somebody denies it, they become a kafir. Okay? If somebody says, I do not need to pray salah anymore, Salatul Fajr, there's no such thing as that. If somebody says that, they're kafir straight away. But a wajib thing, it's equal in strength in terms of action, so you have to do it, and if you don't do it, you're going to be sinful. But if somebody denies the wajib act, they won't leave the fold of Islam. That's the difference. Okay, so for example, if somebody says, so obviously the mainstream opinion within the Hanafis is that witr is wajib, yeah. So if somebody says, oh, you know what, I don't accept witr, I don't believe in witr, we won't call him a kafir. He'll be sinful, yes, but he won't be called a kafir. Okay, so this is the difference. But if somebody does not do a wajib act, he will be sinful. And at times it could be that the complete action is invalid. So if they left out a wajib action in salah, for example, the salah could be invalid. Okay? Everybody following me so far? Or am I going over everybody's head?
That's fine, sure, that's fine.
Okay. Next discussion. Actually, let me just check something. That's fine. Okay, next discussion is, when does Zakatul Fitr have to be given? Okay, when does it have to be given by? Okay, so we have the Hanafi opinion, which is it needs to be given by sunrise of the day of Eid. Okay? Everybody's following so far. So sunrise of the day of Eid. And the other three schools, they say it has to be given by Maghrib, before Maghrib, the previous day. So before Eid actually kicks in, it has to be given by them. The wajib has to be completed by them. Does everybody understand so far? Okay. Why and things like that, I'm not going to go into it, because it gets quite complicated and things like that. Yes.
Does that mean the money has to have reached wherever it's supposed to go to, or like say you put it in a box and it stays in that box till like I don't know next Eid, then what? Like
No.
there's a box.
So if you hand it over to somebody and you make them your representative to distribute it to somebody else, then you've done your due diligence. You've done your job. It's their job now to pass it on. So like for example, what some mosques have is they already have a kitty or like a pot, and before you actually give your zakatul fitr, they distribute it from themselves, and then they replace that money with your zakatul fitr. So they've already paid it on behalf of you. So you're just giving it back to make sure that it reaches the people on time. Okay? Shams. Okay? Does that make sense so far? Okay, come on, carry on.
Is that why for example, my local masjid,
Swansea Mosque?
no, somewhere else, you would pay before the Eid Salah. So it's after sunrise, you would pay the £5 literally before the Eid Salah.
They do it just before the Eid Salah.
That's it. So they have a pot and they say to do it before the Eid Salah. But that's after sunrise. Is that
So how do they get it to the people?
So that's what they probably do. What you said is if they
Okay, as long as they're doing that, then
they
you're
collect
fine.
it. But I don't know if they do.
But if it's not getting to the people, because the main point is, even though it's come through a weak sanad, is to absolve the people from begging on the day of Eid, the poor people especially. Okay, so it needs to be given by them.
When you say by then, do you mean like
Should reach them.
how early can you give it?
Okay, we're going to come to that discussion. Okay. So what's interesting to note as well that the Malikis, they've got both opinions within their school. One is that it has to be given before Eid day actually starts, meaning before Maghrib, and or it could be the next day morning. Okay, so obviously the difference would be now is that back in those days you'd actually be able to see who's poor and who's not and things like that, who's in need and who's not. We don't have the same system in this country. Yeah, but if you go back to Bangladesh and things like that, you can see it. You know who to give it to, who not to give it to. Okay, so just keep that in mind also. Now, does it have to be these specific items mentioned in the hadith? Sa'in min tamr, so a 1 sa' of dates or 1 sa' of barley. Does it have to be these things? I'm going to discuss that in one of the following hadith. Okay. Now the other discussion is, and some people are not going to like this probably. When it says, well, untha, the women folk, they have to give zakat. Other than the Hanafis, the other three schools say that it is the husband's responsibility to pay on behalf of the wife. Okay? Other than the Hanafis,
I want to say money.
it's the husband's responsibility because he's already in charge of her expenditure, as in nafaqa, providing for her and things like that. So he will pay on behalf of the wife. And the Hanafis, they say no. She is responsible for her own sadaqatul fitr, zakatul fitr.
Even though she might not be working.
No, we're going to come to that discussion afterwards. Like who has to give it? So that's going to be the last hadith. But nevertheless, so they say everybody is responsible for their own wajib. I don't pray your fajr for you, and you don't pray my fajr for me.
Oh, come on, man.
So everybody is responsible for their own wajib acts, and therefore they will have to do it themselves. And it doesn't matter whether the wife is rich or not. That's irrelevant. Yes, Sheikh.
Do you know when it says upon the slave? So would it be upon the slave to do it, or would it be the master?
So the slave will have to pay his own.
The slave pays it.
Yeah.
Sure.
Okay, but in what situation does he need to pay and things like that? And we're going to discuss that. Yes.
Who can accept it? Does the person give? Does it have to be Muslim?
The person who is accepting the sadaqatul fitr, generally speaking, yes.
Okay, so if I say, for example, I want to give my fitr and I see like some guy that qualifies for it, but they're not Muslims, is it no? So you can't give it to them?
No. Okay. Any other questions before we move on? Okay, so now coming to a child, the young, okay? Now, so this is referring to somebody who has not reached the age of bulugh, is not baligh yet, not mature. Okay, so for a boy who has not had a wet dream yet, for a girl who has not reached her period yet. So for them, if they have wealth to their name, so if they've done some sort of business or they've inherited money or anything like that, do you take it from them, or is the father responsible? So everybody says that no, you take it from their wealth.
What if I did make money back in the day, but I didn't know this fact that you just said?
So what happens usually is within our culture anyway, within the Bengali culture is the father usually just pays it for everyone.
Covers everyone,
Yeah. So if somebody does pay on behalf of somebody else, it's fine. It's done. Okay. Okay. Go on you first. Sorry.
No, I'm saying, you're saying like paying on behalf of someone. You know how I said like, can you give to Muslim? What if, say for instance, like if you're paying on behalf of someone in your family, but that person isn't Muslim, can you still pay on their behalf or no? That's a good question.
Say again. Can you pay on behalf of somebody who's not Muslim?
Yeah, someone in the family.
Well, it's not binding on them then,
Okay.
because Islamic Sharia does not, generally speaking, or fiqh is not binding upon the non-Muslims, especially in a non-Muslim country.
Would they still get a reward for it or
No.
Okay.
For zakat al-fitr, yes, Sheikh.
Is there, do you know with zakat there's a threshold for the amount of wealth you need to have before you pay? Does it
We're gonna come to that. We're gonna come to that. Okay. Okay. Any other questions before we move on?
Sheikh, I got a question.
Yes.
It's not me, from Farhad Ali. Does the fitr have to be given locally, or can you give it to another needy location?
You can give it anywhere you want. It doesn't have to be local. Whatever is most, it's going to be most benefited. Like a lot of scholars, they do recommend that if you can give it to a family member who is entitled to it, so you can get double reward. You get reward for kinship, tying family ties, for maintaining family ties, and then on top of that you get your sadaqah reward. Yes.
How do you determine that someone's for, to receive it? They're going to receive zakat, is that the...
So if somebody is entitled to so you have something called the nisab, the threshold. If somebody is below that, then they're entitled to receive sadaqah or zakat. But it's makruh to give somebody enough wealth that now they have to give zakat.
Ah, so they're above the nisab.
Yeah. So it's disliked. It's not recommended, because what happens then is you're putting another burden on them. Anything else before I continue? And obviously, the whole point of giving sadaqatul fitr is to make the less fortunate happy on the day of Eid. Okay, make them happy on the day of Eid. Is it okay?
Last question.
Yes.
Is it right that what some mosques do when they put the bucket on after sunrise before each salah?
Is it right or wrong?
Yeah, is it right or wrong? Because the money's not getting to the...
That's why what I said before is some mosques, what they do is they'll dish it out beforehand, and then they'll just take this money to replace the money that's been given out. So they'll, on their behalf, beforehand they'll give the money out to those who need it in the locality, and then they will, and then they'll just basically fill up the kitty with the money that's going to come in. Yes.
But wouldn't that get like messy, because you don't know how many people are there you're giving on behalf of and how much?
No, it's so it doesn't become messy because you don't need to know the names of the people and things like that.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah, sure.
Sorry, last question. So when you give sadaqah and charity,
Yeah.
is it best to give to those who are your renters first? Would it apply to this?
Give it to whoever's in need of it the most. Okay, give it to whoever's in need of it the most. If your relative is entitled to zakat, but they're living okay, comfortably, but they don't have a lot of money, but somebody is, starving, what do you give it to? Yeah. Yes.
You mentioned about the threshold, the people who can receive it and the people who can give it. What if you give in the zakat will put you in that threshold?
No, so you only give.
So you have to give zakat because
you give zakat. I was talking about normal zakat now. I was talking about this. I'm not going to normal zakat discussion right now. Okay, it's going to become too much. Okay, let's continue. Let's continue now. Okay, so next discussion is. Wait, how many hadith have we read?
This is the second one. It's the second.
Okay, let's move on to the next hadith. Okay, so let's read hadith number 2. وعن أبي سعيد الخدري رضي الله تعالى عنه قال كنا نعطيها في زمن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم صاع من طعام أو صاع من تمر وصاع من شعير وصاع من زبيب متفق عليه وفي رواية أو صاع من أقل. قال أبو سعيد أما أنا فلا أزال أخرجه كما كنت أخرجه في زمن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم ولأبي داود لا أخرج أبدا إلا صاع. Narrated Abu Sa'id al-Khudri radiyallahu anhu. At the time of Allah's Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, we used to give out zakatul fitr, a sa' of grain or of dried dates, or of barley or of raisins, agreed upon. Okay, so this particular narration is got additional items. So the first time it was just 2 items, barley and dates, and now you've got grain, you've got raisins, which has been added onto this list. In another narration, a sa' of sun-baked yogurt, whatever that was, sun-baked yogurt. What's that?
Yogurt.
Huh?
How would you sun-bake yogurt? What's yogurt?
Well, ice cream. No.
It's set yogurt.
It's set yogurt.
It's not body on the set yogurt.
Anyway, so Abu Sa'id said, as for me, I am still distributing it, meaning Isa and Sadaqah, as I used to distribute it in the lifetime of Allah's Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Abu Dawud said, Abu Dawud has, I will never give out a sadaqah, anything except Isa. So what he is saying here is that I will always give 1 sa' of whatever it is I'm giving. Okay? And I'm not going to give perhaps the price of it, the money, or any other item. It has to be one of these items. This is what he is saying. Is everybody following so far? So when I give my sadaqatul fitr, it's going to be one of these items. And this is the opinion of the 3 schools other than the Hanafis. Okay? So the Hanafis, other than the Hanafis, everyone says you have to give one of these items and it has to be 1 sa' of it. Everybody's following so far? Okay. So now the Hanafis, they say, no. We can give either these items or anything similar to it or its price. Are you following? The amount is worth, as in cash money. What do you call it? Credit? Is it called credit? No, cash. Yeah, as cash. And Sheikh Nuruddin Itr here also agrees with this. He says that was a time where people were able to use these things. Times have changed now. Now, if you go to a poor person or somebody who's struggling and you give him 1 sa' of dates, but his electricity, or he can't pay his rent and he's going to be on the street the next day, what's better to give? Give him the money. Do you understand? So this is the Hanafi opinion, which seems to have been adopted by more or less everybody now. That you can give the money. Okay, so you can give the money. So everybody else is saying no, we have to stick to what's in the text. But Hanafis is saying no. In the one hadith we had only 2 items. In this hadith we're finding additional items. So what this gives us, the impression that we're receiving is, it's not restricted to these things, but whatever is useful. Whatever is useful, whatever is normal, whatever people can benefit from. So they've taken that approach. Let's read the next hadith, inshallah, and certain other things, inshallah, will become more clear. وعن ابن عباس رضي الله تعالى عنهما قال فرض رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم زكاة الفطر طهرة للصائم من اللغو والرفث وطعمة للمساكين فمن أداها قبل الصلاة فهي زكاة مقبولة ومن أداها بعد الصلاة فهي صدقة من الصدقات رواه أبو داود وابن ماجه وصححه الحاكم. Okay, I thought I read it wrong. Okay, narrated Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhuma. Allah's Messenger sallallahu alayhi wasallam has prescribed Zakatul Fitr as a purification of the fasting person from senseless and obscene talk. So it covers the gaps. So it makes up for any mistakes made during the month. And as food for the poor. Whoever fulfills it before the Eid prayer, it will be an acceptable zakat. Whoever fulfills it before the Eid prayer, it will be an acceptable zakat, and whoever fulfills it after the prayer, it will be counted as a sadaqah, as a normal sadaqah. So if somebody gives it after the Eid prayer, it does not count as zakatul fitr. It will count as a sadaqah. Okay? It will count as a sadaqah. Now, how early can a person give it? How early can a person give the zakatul fitr? Now, when it comes to giving early zakatul fitr, there's a difference of opinion, okay? Everybody says that you can't give it early. But how early? This is where the difference comes in. So according to the Hanafis, a person can give it as early as possible. They can even give it before Ramadan, it's not an issue. You can give it before, even Ramadan, it's not an issue. And the Malikis and the Hanbalis, they say that you can only give it 2 or 3 days before Eid day. As early as that. 2 or 3 days earlier than, or before Ramadan ends and Eid starts. And the Shafi'i says, as long as it's given within Ramadan, it's fine. So the Hanafis are the more relaxed one. You can give it before Ramadan. Give it to the people and say, look, use this for Eid or use this for whatever. You're done. Shafi'is has to be in Ramadan, and Malikis and the Hanbalis, they say that 2 or 3 days before, not earlier than that. Does that make sense? And as we've read, Zakatul Fitr is there to make up for any mistakes and wrongdoings that we have done throughout the entire month. Now, what?
So, you said, like, say if someone gives Zakatul Fitr after sundown, then it becomes normal sadaqah.
No. After sundown. After Eid prayer.
After Eid prayer, it becomes normal sadaqah, right? Would that person be then sinful for missing?
Yes, they missed a wajib.
Okay.
Or according to the other schools, they missed a fard. They will be sinful.
Yeah.
And they will have to compensate for it. They still have to make it up afterwards.
Yeah.
But they're still sinful for it. Okay? Keep that in mind. It becomes a debt, outstanding debt. And they'll be sinful for it though.
But is it like the only way you could repay it is to give it the next?
No, you give it after. You still have to pay it.
Yeah.
You still owe it.
Yeah.
But you have to repent for your sin. Because you missed out a fard or a wajib.
So it's a major sin.
It's a major sin.
Okay.
Well, you're missing out a compulsory act. Okay? Okay, now, final discussion, and with that we will conclude, inshallah, is who has to give Zakatul Fitr? Like, when does it become binding? Okay? So, put the Hanafis onto one side, and the other 3 schools, they say that when a person has surplus wealth with which they're able to complete their Sadaqatul Fitr, that person has to give Sadaqatul Fitr. Okay? It's got nothing to do with your normal zakat. Okay? It's only the Hanafis who say that you have to have the threshold of zakat, then you give your Zakatul Fitr. Does that make sense? No, then it's not binding upon you. You don't have to give it.
So if you do give it, it's just sadaqah.
Yeah, it will be sadaqah, yeah. I mean, you can still give your Zakatul Fitr, it's no problem. But it's not wajib upon you. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So I think, I'm not going to quote it from the top of my head. I think gold is like 612 grams of gold is the threshold.
Silver.
Is it silver?
Yeah, 87 gold.
That's it, yeah, 87. So silver is 612 grams, and 87 also grams is of gold is the threshold. So whichever one you meet, zakat will become fard on you. So if you have savings, not savings, you have money present at that time which is surplus to that, or you meet that, then you have to give sadaqatul fitr.
This is quite a very technical question, but what if you have money in crypto? Would you have to pay on that as well?
I don't know.
Rather than mention-
I have not looked into crypto. I don't know. There's a website. It's called Darul Fiqh. Who did talk to? Who did I tell the other day? Huh? No. It's Sheikh Adam Faraz Adam, is it? Sheikh Adam Faraz, Mufti Faraz Adam. So he is an expert in the Islamic finance. I think he's got a paper on this somewhere, an article on it. So have a look at that. I don't like transactions and business and stuff, so I don't stay away from it. Not my thing. Okay, and with that we conclude our study, inshallah, of this course. Is there any questions before we conclude? No? So just pay zakat al-fitr on time, okay? We want the people to be happy, we want them to make dua for us, and we don't want to be liable. Okay? They have a right over us. May Allah the Almighty allow us to reach Ramadan. Worship Allah in Ramadan the way He deserves to be worshipped. Sorry bro, it's closed now.
One last question.
Go on.
You know the Qatul Fitr, you said the Hanafi says you can pay it at any time. Can we pay on behalf of multiple Ramadans? So pay future. So
I don't know.
10 with the Ramadans.
I don't know. I'll have to check that.
Chef, there's one more question. It was from last week actually. If someone didn't make the intention before, like say the night before.
Somebody's already asked me this. So without the intention, it's incomplete. You have to make it up. It's like if somebody prayed the Dhuhr without the intention of Salah, the Salah is not valid.
Okay.
Say that again, sorry?
But that's according to obviously the Shafi school and the Hanbali school. The Hanafis you go until half the day.
Yes.
So perhaps in those certain or extreme circumstances, we can maneuver to the other madhab and just adopt it so that we're safe. But consult an imam or something.
But I think you said in the action itself is intention. So if you're making wakes up for suhoor.
Yeah. So if somebody wakes up for suhoor and things like that, then or they pray the Tarawih night the night before and they know the next day is Ramadan, that's fine. Yes, Sheikh.
Off-topic question. Can I ask you?
Okay, let's do a conclusion and then ask it. Is it to do with Ramadan or anything like that?
It's to do with intention of Salah.
Intention. Okay, we'll come back to that afterwards. Okay, let's just conclude, inshallah. Yeah. So I say Jazakallah to everybody for coming and attending the lessons. If there's been any mistakes, obviously it's from myself and Shaitan. And if anybody's benefited anything from this course at all, then it's from Allah the Almighty. Most important thing is practice what you've learned. Otherwise, there's no point in learning. It's going to become a burden upon us.
Are we not accountable for everything you've taught us?
You're accountable for your own deeds. That's what I want to say. Okay? So may Allah make it easy for us and allow us to gather like this also in Jannah together. And if anybody's got any feedback or suggestions for further courses or future courses, please do let Brother Shazad know, inshallah. He's the manager. Sorry, Shams. And inshallah we'll see what we can do to accommodate or to improve on our lessons. Jazakumullah khairan. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Sheikh, can I end?